Wake up.
Wake up.
Wake up. Wake up. Wake up.
Cold seawater gently jostles your form. You open your eyes. As you spring to your knees, struggling to breathe, you feel something coming up. It burns. You hunch over, and with the heavy heave, ingested salt water burns the back of your throat as you expel it from your body, emptying the contents of your stomach into the water below as it's washed away. Stumbling weakly to your feet, your vision is blurry, your lips parched, in need of water. You quickly take off your boot and fill it with seawater, walking away, staring down into its salty contents. You whir to life your ultra gauntlet. Magic runes brim with power on its edges as you cast one of the pre-etched spells from it. You purify the salt water housed in your boot and drink it as if your lips have never come into contact with fresh water before. You breathe deeply as your senses come to you. Your hearing becomes clearer, your sight unblurred, and you hear the sound of metal tearing. You turn your head to your left. You see two creatures of pale white flesh. Feathery wings sprout from their hunched over forms. They strike and destroy the vessel you arrived in as it sits there in pieces on the shore. They destroy it beyond repair, making it hopeless. You look at them. The corpses of the other Veil Walkers litter the shore. They were not as lucky as you. You see claw marks and stab wounds all over their body. Their blood blends with the water below. The creatures have wings that shroud their face, but eyeballs encased in some type of golden apparatus float from their head freely and look in your direction. Their long necks twist around to look at you, but you're already gone. Nothing more than a couple dozen footsteps in the sands beneath your feet. Running out from the beach, you look behind yourself, and you see what you could only describe as home. A black orb floating in the sky. It's almost like a blotch upon your vision. Its eyes so big that it casts a deep, dark shadow on the very beach you stand on. As you ascend the grassy hills beyond, you look up at your home, the black veil drifting in the sky, before you resolve yourself to continue inland to fulfill your mission as a Veil Walker. And as you stare, confronting an alien landscape before you, one scarred and blighted by divinity, destined to never heal. Welcome to Kh'raaun. Hey everyone, it's Zach, and today we make our return to Epocrion. But first, I'd like to thank those of you who are subscribers of mine for being ever patient, because the wait was well worth it. You see, with the groundwork for the basics of my magic systems outlined in the channel, I can now start to build upon those concepts in increasing levels of complexity without losing you, the viewer, by always having a reference point for what's being discussed in video format. Think of it as like a world building tome, but instead of having just simple pages, you can also have an entire video playlist to go refer back to if you ever need to. And for those that are new here and don't know what Epocrion'Eth is, Epocrion is a post-apocalyptic fantasy setting written and created by yours truly, taking big inspirations from the Fallout series and many others. In this fantasy setting, I detail a world that was brought to ruin by the Celestials from another world. The history behind these events and how the world persists after its fall, after the great cleansing of light, is primarily my goal. It's to explore this world where its end has come and everyone is just living in the aftermath trying to pick up the pieces. How did we get here, and what are the remnants left behind that can give us a glimpse into the world that once was. For this project, I essentially built an entire world and then set into motion the events that would subsequently end it, developing entire cultures with history and a unique world outlook, then taking that through the post-apocalyptic filter and seeing how those cultures change in the new post-apocalyptic setting that they are now in, and also how these apocalyptic events may have led to certain changes in the geography of the land that was so inundated with a blight called the Luxon Curse, which irradiates the land with a corrupting light that infects other creatures and bleeds into the magic of the world itself, while also dampening out various other sources of magic in place of its own. But more on that later. The many tales and stories of Epocrion are centered around the epicenter of the great cleansing of light. The continent of Acrion is the source of the Ultronium engines which were spread across the world. There are 4 primary regions that make up Acrion, which are the Kingdom of Valora, the Quthari Plains, the Marsh of Eroenia, and the Highlands of Kh'raaun Vamorr. Before I hop into all that, along with this video, I've designed 2 spells for each region that we'll be talking about here in our video today, which will be available on my Patreon for those of you who are subscribed to it. And for those of you who are Face Seamsters, however, you will get access to a brief write-up of the 4 regions of Acrion itself, with slightly more detail than what was discussed here in this video today. There are also plenty of other things you can find over my Patreon, such as write-ups for my 5e classic Gnostic magic system called the Mythic Founts, a binding valve for spells which allows you to modify spells so heavily they basically become yours, and my Ashes of War inspired martial system for D&D called Battle Arts. Additionally, if you'd like to be the first to know when I'm inevitably going to be running an Apocrion one-shot, either become a free member on my Patreon or join my Discord, as the announcement will be made there before anywhere else. However, players of my games and those who have subscribed to my Patreon will get first dibs on the slots whenever those come around. So be on the lookout for all of that in the coming weeks. Going back to the bulk of what we're here to discuss in this video, however, we have our first region that we'll be talking about, the Quthari Plains. A vast, grassy plain set on the eastern side of Acrion. The Quthari people value freedom above all else, as it is entrenched in their culture. You see, to be Quthari is to ultimately be free, and to be one with the winds as they take you. This is best represented in their ideology, as in their eyes anyone can become Quthari as long as they thoroughly adopt their ways in mind and in spirit. And this is what is truly beautiful about them, and why they're one of my favorite regions to create, and honestly probably while we're covering them first. A Quthari isn't just the person, it's a culture and lifestyle that beckons people to the wind, to be like it, free as the sky, to wander wherever life takes you and brave any turbulence you may find along your path. Be the raging storm along the coast, or the calm breeze over the plains grass. Listen to the world around you, the song of Eth below you, the whispers in the wind around you. Connect to the world in oneness. The various Quthari clans, most of whom are nomadic, and often a particular clan is selected to rule Ardhaven, at the heart of the plains itself, as this is a common way for the Quthari to receive trade and other materials from the surrounding regions, while also shifting leadership over from one clan to another, with the natural leaning of their culture being to always be on the move. Most elected clans tend to gleefully return to their nomadic lifestyle once things are said and done and another clan can take their post. One of the more unique aspects of the Quthari is the way in which they interact with magic and connect with the world itself through it. Due to their culture, most Quthari tend to connect more readily to the world itself through the touch of Eth. However, rather than largely manipulating the soil, they manipulate the use of wind through magic, from gliding across the tall grassy sea to creating wind tunnels to speed up entire caravans, and of course using this wind for specialized forms of combat. Now, where the various clans of the Quthari Plains stand after the great cleansing of light will be something I go into greater detail about in a future video, specifically dedicated to the region itself. One thing you'll probably see here is that I'll be saving a lot of the core, maybe even more fun details about the region you'll be seeing here in our video today, and I'll be saving that for the future. This is mostly because I don't want this video to be too long, and also because I'd like to dedicate a video to properly fleshing out each region of Kh'raaun itself. I'd like to give each one their own space to breathe and properly showcase the passion that I have for them. On to our second region, we have the Highlands of Kh'raaun Vamorr, a heavily forested region to the far north of Kh'raaun, which experiences cold summers and blistering frigid winters. The landscape is mostly wild and untamed, with there being many monsters and creatures that make up its ecosystem. It is here we have the people of the Banners of Kh'raaun and their unique tie to the source of magic known as the ancestral wellspring, a mystical fount of souls which carry the spirits of great heroes that have lived and died. To channel this power is to evoke their knowledge, will, and strength. The culture of Kh'raaun is thus built around this source of power, the ancestral wellspring, and from a young age, those who live under the Banners of Kh'raaun are taught that they must look to their ancestors for wisdom for the hardships to come. As they grow older, they realize that these hardships are strange as they may sound to an outsider. Aberrational monsters loom in the far north, and with every year as the magic of the world gets thinner, these aberrational intruders grow closer and closer to Kh'raaun, clawing their way through the rift in the process. You see, those under the Banners of Kh'raaun, they grow up with a sense of honor and duty, because in the harsh hinterlands for which they live, to be anything but can spell the death of the whole. This grand mission, this ideal to protect the rest of the world, or in this case, their fellow Epocrion'Eths to the south, sits the main motivator across the unified banners themselves. Although not all adhere to this sentiment, and some leave the harsh lands of the north for more gentler and greener pastures to the south. And although this can be and is sometimes considered abandoning one's inherited duty to the world itself, which may sound quite dramatic, but when your people were tested in the past and took a vow to fighting these otherworldly creatures, and not for themselves, not for glory or valor, but duty to the world which they call home. As such, with this inherited sense of honor, many of those who are of the Kh'raaun Highlands tend to fall back home after a long journey, wishing to apply their gained knowledge, prowess, and newfound expertise from the different lands to their grand mission of protecting the world of what lies beyond the unknown north of their homeland. For our third region of Kh'raaun, we have the Kingdom of Valora, the arcane center of Kh'raaun, which sits on the western side of the continent. It is here Valorans come in two shapes and forms. First, you have those who dwell in the far-flung outer towns, where traditional modes of spellcraft and theory are taught. It is here where people of these lands live in harmony with their surroundings, where adventurers find their work taking on odd ends and jobs in far-flung wildernesses, confronting challenging threats from monstrosities born from arcane mutation to dire beasts, to even creatures infused with so much primal magic they've become folk legends in themselves of their local region. Then secondly, you have those who dwell in the major cities of Valora, where the modern forms of spellcraft and theory are taught. Here in these major cities, life is full of wonder, with 10-story high buildings, an advanced arcane railcar system, and vast magic colleges which are at the forefront of magic and arcane discovery. It is here people live in constant innovation and progress, as these are the very same cities that first created the ultronium engines which the rest of the world depends on now. Arcane machines, you see, which pull from the ambient arcanum in the atmosphere to power itself for a myriad of different uses. Adventurers who wish to find work within the cities of the kingdom will often find themselves fulfilling odd jobs within it, to more lucrative endeavors which involve social intrigue, spy work, assassinations, and faction/gang violence. However, the best work for adventurers within the city will often take them outside of said places and onto more wild and untamed parts of Valora itself. As diverse trade is a large part of Valoran economy, taking up tasks and missions that would send an adventurer on a year-round trip is sometimes common in adventuring circles. This is also seen as a prestigious task upon completion in the eyes of the Valoran culture, to go out into the world and gather knowledge of various places, peoples, and furthermore, magic. All of this for you to further bring back to continue the process of innovation and progress. Valorans are often seen as entitled, however, in other regions, having grown up with the commodities of their land. Most times they are not used to the various lifestyles of those who exist outside of their cities. For those who live outside of the city, however, they have a much easier time adapting to new and strange environments far more easily. However, they do show promise in their ingenuity, cunning, and they're able to come up with unthought of solutions to a number of issues, arcane or otherwise. But from the Kingdom of Progress and onto a different region, one with a lot more rain, we have our final region of Kh'raaun, the Marsh of Eroenia, a land where many of the primal ley lines converge and intersect, giving birth to Kh'raaun's one and only Elderwood. However, due to the inundation of primal magic, the landscape is rife with creatures surged by this very same magic. But there is another factor here. With all these converging ley lines, the weather of Eroenia is also quite turbulent, causing the region to experience heavy rain and thunderstorms almost year-round, which nourishes and maintains the swamp-like environment. Where the Marsh of Eroenia differ from the other regions which deal with magic-infused creatures is that they've tamed and turned some of these monsters into everyday creatures that they interact with. Some allow them to traverse their environment easier, others can be used for combat or even healing. The magic of Eronia also reflects this as well, from spells created in inspiration of their extremely hostile environment, living in harmony with monsters and primal beasts, to spells created to combat this environment in whatever way they can manage. But we cannot talk about Eronia without first talking about its culture, which is very unique to Kh'raaun, as it is centered around their Elderwood, a 700 to 1,000 foot tall tree brimming with primal magic. You see, the Elder Woods appear where there are 4 or more convergent primal ley lines, becoming a physical manifestation of the ley lines that dwell deep below the ground underneath them. The Elderwood itself, with those who command its power, provide a protective radius around the city that has come to erect beneath it. A chieftain and shaman commune with this Elderwood as conduits for its power and joint leadership. The shaman wields the voice of Eth and commands the world itself to assist their people, whereas the chieftain uses the power to protect their borders from the creatures and monsters that dwell outside of its protective radius. And in doing so, the chieftain becomes surged with this magic and might as well be considered a demigod during this period of time. Adventurers within Eroenia might find themselves sleeping in beautiful, nature-born beds with delicate leaves and pillows made from the softest plant fibers around. After enjoying a nice meal at their local tavern, which, by the way, is made from the husk of a giant tree stump, you go out to find that today is yet another rainy day, which is fantastic. With the pattern of rain on your shoulders, you would venture out into the marshes beyond. Those who live in Eroenia have evolved the way that they dressed to accommodate their environment, while also creating armors, weapons, and the like, which don't impose on the difficulty of traversing their environment. They've also retrofitted their environment to suit these weapons and armors needs as well, wearing oftentimes the hides and skins of the various creatures and monsters that roam around the marshes. Groups of adventurers in Eronia will find themselves fending off against intense megafauna and flora that have been enchanted with primal magic, from huge crocodiles with razor-sharp scales, powerful monstrous eels who can send lightning ripping through the air, to living man-eating plants who wait for innocent passerbys before sweeping them up, and you get the point. There are even legendary creatures that have gained folklore in both how dangerous they can be and how elusive they really are. However, those brave enough to find, capture, or kill these strange monsters are sure to make a fantastic living here in the marshes of Eronia. And with that, we bring our video to a close. I'd like to sincerely thank everyone for staying with it until the end. Be sure to give the video a like if you want to see more of Epocrion, and also so that other people can see the colorful world that we're building here. As always, subscribe to see more on Epocrion in the future, and you can join my Discord here, where you could potentially join a professionally ran D&D game hosted by yours truly. Maybe even in Epocrion itself, once I start running one-shots for it to playtest the setting and put everything you've seen here today into actual practice in a game setting, which is the intent from the start. I always wanted Epocrion to be a setting you can actually immerse yourself and play in. I want you to be able to traverse the odd landscape of Eronia, potentially freeze to death as you fight strange otherworldly creatures in Kh'raaun Vamorr, wind glide over the grassy sea of the Quthari Plains as you evade the plains wyverns. And I want you to feel as if you're walking through the streets of the imaginative arcane cities of the Kingdom of Valora, or in this case, the ruins of, because don't forget, this world ended, and now we get to see what happens next. But bringing an end to our video, I'd like to give a huge thanks to my patrons over on Patreon for showing me so much support while I bring my fantasy worlds to life. Seeing and reading the outpour of support from all of you has definitely positively impacted my drive to bring you more, better, and higher quality content beyond my usual. But with that, my friends, I'll see you in the next one.